And now, live from beautiful Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, you're watching My Fellow Americans with your host, Spike Cohen.
Yes! Welcome to the show. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. It's me. It's me. Thank you so much. Thank you. Keep clapping. Well, I guess you can stop now. Thank you for joining. Welcome to My Fellow Americans. I am literally Spike Cohen. It has been 6 weeks. 5 weeks. 6 weeks. It has been over a month since I've done this show. It's been just a tragedy of errors, or comedy of errors. Tragedy. It's been a comic tragedy why I haven't been in front of you. So first thing, if you remember the last time that your beloved host, me, Spike Cohen, was on. Actually, let's start with something. I'm so rusty. I am so rusty. This is a Muddied Waters Media production. You can check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, SoundCloud, Twitter. We're on Periscope. We're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher. We're on Anchor FM. More on that later. Be sure to check us out. Give us favorable 5, 6, 12 star, whatever the star rating maximum is. Give us that. And then give us some details on why you like us so much. That really helps us a lot on all those different podcasting and video sharing sites and apps and so forth. Be sure to do that. Share this video right now. I already know that this show is going to be the absolute best show that I have ever done. And so I don't want, it would be a shame if the people you care about most missed out on what you're experiencing right now. So be sure to share it. If you are listening to this and it's not live, share it anyway. There's never a bad time to share this. So be sure to do that. As always, I'd like to thank Kroger for the delicious purified drinking water that I drink on this and almost every show episode of My Fellow Americans, Bulavanaka. The intro and outro music, as always, is from the amazing and talented Mr. Joe Davi. That's Jodavi. Be sure to check him out on Facebook, SoundCloud. Check him out. Go on to, I think it's like jodavi.bandcamp.com, or if you just go to bandcamp.com and look for Joe Davi, buy all of his music. It's like $8, $10. Buy all of it. It's amazing. You'll be so happy that you did that. Thank you again to Mr. Joe Davi. Shout out to Tehran Turks' mom and him, as always. So, as I alluded to before, forgetting that I had stuff I had to do before the show started, or at the start of the show, you might be wondering, Spike, where have you been? Where's your show been? Why have you only done shows with Matt on the couch? And while that's an amazing angle for you, Spike, that kind of top-down look, it makes you look youthful, even more youthful than you normally look. Why were you doing it? Well, that's a great question. It's amazing that all of you thought and said that at the same time with the same intonation that I did. So I had my last episode with Joshy Bear Smith and James Michael Smith. And I'm saying his name wrong. No, it's James Michael Smith. And to promote their documentary that they're working on, Living in Liberty. And after that show, I got up and said, I'm going to go cook food because I'm a human and eat. And I went and bent down to get something and experienced the most excruciating pain I've ever had in my life in my back and wasn't able to walk for the better part of 2 days. It was just hurt so much I couldn't put any pressure on my legs or my back. And so the last month and a half has been a story of me working to be able to walk again, which I can now, thankfully. But the hardest thing still is sitting upright like this. You'd think that wouldn't be as hard as walking, but it's actually harder. And so we're going to do this as long as I can. I did it for about an hour and a half yesterday and was feeling it. So we're going to do it as long as we can today. That's why I don't have a guest. I don't want to have someone on here, sharing their time with us only to then, have to cancel the show halfway through because of my back. So it's just going to be me here doing my thing. And I'm going to start with, I didn't share this. I am rusty. So, guys, when I say I'm rusty, I am rusty. I haven't even shared this on my own Facebook. This is how rusty I am. This is what happens when you don't do something for... You don't do something for, let's see, for six weeks. Okay. So yeah. So it's going to be you and me today. So feel free to comment with any questions or thoughts you have. First of all, something that we were addressing yesterday and we promised we would update you here at Muddied Waters Media the very second we knew. It was looking like bad. So we talked yesterday, Matt and I, on the Muddy Waters of Freedom. We talked about the fact that the city of Denver was having a referendum on whether or not to decriminalize psilocybin mushrooms, otherwise known as psychedelic mushrooms or magic mushrooms, or mushrooms that make you throw up and then trip really hard and love it, which I did. It was looking last night like we were going to have to share some bad news, that it came really close, but... You know, they voted against it. I think when I looked, I don't know, 2 in the morning or midnight or whatever I looked last night, it was 48 to 52, 52 against, I keep wanting to say decriminalizing it. So it will still be illegal. They just won't jail you for it. And there are a lot of people that believe that decriminalization is better than legalization, because legalization comes with regulation and taxation and a bunch of other things that actually make it worse. Whereas decriminalization just says, yeah, you're not supposed to do it, but we're not going to do anything about it. We might take it from you if we find it, but that's like the worst thing. And we're not going to tax it. We're not going to regulate it. If you do it, just basically don't get caught. But we're not going to give you jail time or anything like that, which is, a lot of people would say that's even better. It passed. It passed narrowly, but it passed. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. It's also going to be interesting to see how this plays out on the federal level. So weed has been one thing, because the reality is the vast majority of people are okay with even recreational weed being legal at this point. So even though it is illegal on the federal level, there's just not a lot of energy in Congress or in the White House to enforce it. Or at least to enforce it in places where they've legalized it, even though it's still technically federally illegal. And so places like Oregon and Vermont, Massachusetts, and California, as well as other states that have, in Colorado, and other states that have, states and cities that have either decriminalized it or allowed it for medical use, or made it completely legal even for recreational use, or regulated, or whatever they've done, even though it's technically completely illegal for any use, even medical, at the federal level. The feds have been, for the most part, kind of backing off and letting the states do it. Well, now we're doing psychedelics. So we're going to see how that goes. Now, this was a good psychedelic to pick. As far as I know, no one has ever died from magic mushrooms. They may have, but I'm not aware of it. It is one of the more mild psychedelics. There are studies showing that it can be helpful in dealing with depression, and for inpatients, people with depression and other emotional issues that weren't able to treat it using traditional or legal psychotropic meds. So there's similar to marijuana, there's sort of this medical / it's not that harmful and people enjoy it type of argument. But this is not weed. We're now talking psychedelics. So now questions of like, okay, well, you can't take psychedelics and drive, or can you? And how will that be tested? So it's going to be fun to see how that plays out. But there are a lot of worrying trends in the political world. Most of the trends are towards people wanting government to make other people do something, whether it's make them pay me more, or make them, put taxes on products that are from other countries because I want to have to pay more for stuff because somehow that's going to help American workers, or, stop those people from crossing the border into the country if they don't, fill out all the paperwork, or, don't let people assume my gender or misgender me, or, if I want a If I want a wedding cake, and if I want a gay wedding cake from a Christian baker, they should have to make it for me even if they're against it. Or Facebook needs to be made to allow me to be on their platform. Or, all these different opinions they all boil down to someone is doing something with their property and I don't like it, and I want the government to stop them from doing it or force them to do it a different way. What we're seeing with drugs is kind of different, where it's people saying, I don't really think government should tell people what they can do with their bodies. So that's it. I'm an anarchist. I'm a radical libertarian. And so there's obviously not a lot in the political world for me to be happy about other than to watch smug people get upset. That's really what makes me happy, and smug. And one thing that isn't troubling is seeing how people are kind of relaxing their attitudes about, even if you're against drugs, even if, I've been sober for 13 years. I'm not going to do drugs. I think for the most part, getting intoxicated is usually not a good idea, just in general. But it's none of my business what you do. And it's good to see that it seems to be people are getting more and more along that way of thinking. So wanted to update you on that. Magic mushrooms now decriminalized, or will be decriminalized in Denver. I don't know when it's as of, but that's what we're being told. So I'm gonna go through the comments. Jacob LaBelle, pie is quantifiably better than cake. Pie is like a liquid cake. Let's talk about cake for a second. Cake is an amazing thing. Like it's bread that's sweet. And has, often other things in it. Pie takes it to a completely different level. So I tend to agree with you, because I can think of a lot of pies that I like better than cakes, but I can't think of a cake that I like better than a pie. My new best friend Shane Sweeney says, and I'm literally Shane Sweeney, which is true. Shane Sweeney and I had some street beef for a fortnight, and we've quashed it. We're gonna keep it real now. No more East Coast, West Coast. It actually is, because I'm on the East Coast of South Carolina, and he's on the West Side. But we've quashed that. We killed it. We're gonna increase the peace in these streets. Adam Montgomery says, and the topic is, so welcome to my show, where usually I have a guest, and the topic is usually what that guest is doing, and then we talk about current events and their thoughts on things, and usually either a libertarian guest or a right of center guest, or small government guest. Every once in a while we get a progressive on here, but usually not. But we don't have a guest, so the topic today is me. It's me. Trifle is better than both. Than both pie and cake. I don't even know what trifle is. I know, like, trifling. Like, you've been trifling. Lies, you've been reported. That's probably... I think I'm seeing a beef in my comments. Yeah. Yeah, you guys can... I'm pretty tough. Yeah, you guys are gonna work that out between the two of you. Sarah Branian says, you just got me in trouble. I said, here we go. Listen to the Jew. And my husband fussed. That's what the damn thing I clicked on said. Well, I mean, you're Jewish. Like, we get to do that, right? Like, we get to do the Jewish tropes. We're Jewish. That's like black people with their word, Like, they can say it. We can't say it. So we're not black, but they can say it. They can, and then they can also say, like, we really shouldn't be saying this. But then, like, if I said, yeah, you're right, that's probably not something you should say, they'd be like, hey, back off, colonizer, right? So that's like, it's not just their word to say, it's their word to say that they shouldn't say. So I think we should, there's nothing wrong with you saying, listen to the Jew. More arguing between Jacob and Fotini. Will you have call-ins? I'm sure this wouldn't be used with malice. You know what? Gosh dang it. Let's do that, because that won't be there is no way that I will regret doing this. Hold on, I don't have the... Let me check something. Yeah, there we go. So if you want to call, I think this will work. Call 813-644-2722. And I don't know. This could go many ways, but we'll see. I have nothing else to do. I am. Oh, and I'm not in the right hangout. Steven, take the call if it comes in. Now I am. I think this will work. If someone wants to call, you are free to call. Otherwise, I'm going to just keep talking, which is your fault. Just seen a commercial for stool softeners. That's nice. Mushrooms are even safer than weed. The federal government should force people to take shrooms. There are worse things that the federal government could force us to do. Sarah says, I didn't get an answer to this yesterday, but essentially, if they take Trump off the ballot in California, can't they just write him in? We had DC Mayor win as a write-in. It was a big deal. You can't just write the person in. You also have to check next to their name. I don't know how that would work. I don't know. Oh, that was quick. So we're getting a call. Caller, welcome to...
There are worse things that the federal government could force us to do.
I'm hearing myself.
Sarah says, I didn't get an answer yesterday.
Hello?
If they take Trump off the ballot in California...
I'm calling for Spike.
Hi, I'm Spike. I can hear myself talking through your recording, through your watching it. Do you mind muting that for a second?
How that would work, I don't know. Oh, that was quick.
Yeah. You got a call.
Yeah, hey, who's this?
It's Jason Willis.
Jason Willis? This is getting even better because now I hear myself welcoming you to the show. Can I get you to mute that?
I can try.
Okay.
I'm in North Dakota, so things don't work
as
great up
fast.
here.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is my favorite Canadian. I think he's Canadian. Well, no, oh God, I
am
shouldn't say
not
it.
Canadian.
My wife is Canadian. My second favorite Canadian, the illustrious Jason Willis. Jason, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, sir.
Jason Willis, by the way, if you are ever in North Dakota and want a delicious choke cherry meal, Jason Willis is who you would go to for that.
I am sitting here and enjoying my Minnesota Twins because I am actually from Minnesota, not Canada, but we are currently defeating the Canadian baseball team, which is the Toronto Blue Jays. So
you're conflicted. You're kind of conflicted because the Canadians are losing.
You're the one who married the Canadian, not me.
Oh, yeah, but we also don't really watch baseball, so.
You're a communist.
I remember Kirby Puckett. That was a big guy, and that's really all I remember about the Twins.
If you don't watch baseball, you're basically a communist.
I've been accused of worse. What's going on? What do you think about this shroom thing? Other than you think the government should force us all to take it?
In my heart of hearts, I am very much like you, where I think people should be able to do whatever they want to themselves without harming others.
Right.
I do see the downside of this on a larger scale societal level because I have had the opportunity to go through Denver the last couple of years, and there is a significant homeless problem there. And I think this will contribute to that. And I think the drug legalization has contributed to their ongoing and growing homeless problem there. I don't recommend or advocate the fact that government should be involved to fix it. I think it can fix itself.
Right.
But that's not to be said that actions don't have consequences.
Oh, of course.
So, I mean, so I am a believer that, individual responsibility and individual freedom go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that being said, I do see this being a kind of a pathway for some of these places to have more and more problems inside of their communities that function kind of underneath the radar, their homeless populations and things like that.
Right.
What I find interesting is that while these things get passed at the state level and they're heralded as, progressive movements forward for legalization in either Washington or Colorado.
Right.
And the only way they get moved forward, and this is literally the only way, and it's so shocking and surprising to me, but the only way they actually ever do get moved forward, and it was a great distinction that you made at the beginning of your show between decriminalization and legalization.
Legalization, right.
But the only way they do get moved forward is through legalization, because the government wants their piece.
Right.
The only way it's going to happen is if they can tax it and regulate it.
Right.
And everybody seems to be so happy with that because they get what they want. They want to be able to do their drugs and everything like that.
Right. They want to be able to do the thing without going to jail or risk going to jail. Right.
Exactly. Right. And they don't see the downside or the negative side of the taxation and the legal and the regulation of it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And what ends up happening, and it's being borne out in both Seattle and Denver, two of the most high populous areas of homelessness, is both places have determined that they will not only decriminalize but legalize and tax these different shops and things that can sell weed and pot, and I'm assuming that now shrooms is probably not too far behind that.
Oh, of course.
But why isn't the money then going forward to pay for the things that it's helping to create? The money's not being put towards the homeless problems. The homeless problems continue to grow even after the legalization has happened.
Right.
The
so
money's being thrown into
just going into the general fund. Right. Yep.
Exactly. It's being thrown into these boondoggles and all these special pet projects that everybody wants to fund. But people are flocking to these places in droves, and they're living on the streets, and they're have addiction problems, and they have these problems, and it's become legalized, and everybody's making money off of it, both the private side and the public side. But the continuing problem, the societal problem, is not being addressed, and it's very kind of ironic and funny to me that everybody sees these things as victories from the uber left to the uber right, as like, oh well, there's freedom happening there, but in actuality, all it is more government. It's just disguised a little bit better. Right.
So I almost entirely agree with everything you just said. I'd like to kind of break down the different parts of it. So if we, and this is a common theme with the show, if we look at government as what it essentially acts as, which is an organized crime unit that has given itself legal authorization to do what it does, it kind of makes what they do more clear. And this is a perfect example of that. So if we look at how they've handled gambling, there used to be a thing called the numbers. I think that probably still exists, but it was a lot bigger in the past, where basically it was a lottery that was run by local people that would see. And so it
was organized crime. It was the mob.
Yeah, it was the mob doing it. And originally it was probably just normal people doing it, but the mob was like, they muscled in and said, this is our thing now. Well, then the big mob came in and said, no, the numbers is immoral and it's a terrible thing and gambling's bad and the Bible says not to do it. And they used those as pretexts to stop the mob from doing the numbers. And then what did they do? They immediately turned around and said, well, what we really need is the lottery. And they call it the education lottery or the infrastructure lottery or whatever they can call it to try to make it sound like it's something other than the numbers. And of course, the difference between the lotteries that the states have and the numbers is that the odds are way more geared towards people not making any money. It is really a tax on poor people who don't have good financial planning. And I say that as someone who occasionally will buy a ticket or two when the jackpot is some ridiculous, $1 billion figure or whatever, multi-million-dollar figure. But for the most part, people are going to put thousands of dollars a year in and get nothing from it. And, every once in a while they'll get back $20 or $50 and they'll get that serotonin rush. But in the reality, they're losing money. If they just taken that money and put it in a simple savings account, or not to mention an actual investment account, they do way better. But it's, now the government controls that. And so here's another example of that. Drugs are bad, drugs are bad, drugs are bad. I was a DARE kid. I had the DARE shirt, Nancy Reagan, just say no, just say no. And now that they've successfully kind of, or I shouldn't say successfully, they've they've created this idea that, buying drugs is bad. Now they step in and go, well, if we taxed it, then imagine all the great things we could do. And they sort of turn it around. So it's really, they just, like you said, they want their cut. So decriminalization's first step. Next step is full legalization, which has some positives, but like I said, it's mostly, we would argue, mostly negatives. The other side of that you were talking about was the homeless thing, that and just the negative consequences in general. And it's because in a truly free society, if we said, you can do whatever you want with your body, put whatever you want in it, do whatever you want with it, it's your body, just don't hurt anyone else, but you can do whatever you want. If we lived in a truly free society, the flip side of that, and that's what you were talking about, and you are also responsible for the consequences of that because you and everyone else is free to do what they want with their bodies, that means no one else can be forced to pay for your bad choices. So if you, and this could be anything, this could be if you eat too much, or you don't work out enough, or you have bad life choices, whether it's drugs, alcohol, whatever, even just bad nutrition. Finances, what? Yeah, exactly. Finance. If you just bad money, if you put all your money in the lottery, whatever it is, no one is going to be
a bunch of money into student loans, and you make bad choices.
Yep.
Which is a hot topic right now.
Yeah,
it's a big topic right now.
If you spent six figures on basket weaving, yeah.
Exactly. They've tried to take, and this is just my personal take on the whole thing.
Yeah.
Collectivism is the evil that tries to remove individuality, and they try to remove individual responsibility along with it. So what they try to do is kind of create this pseudo safety net that says you don't need to be responsible for anything that you do. We'll figure out a way to take care of you, but we're also going to be able to limit everything you do.
Well, and we're not going to force you to be responsible for what you do. We're going to force you to be responsible for what everybody does, and everyone else is going to be forced to, which of course begs the question, well, then why should I be responsible? Because if I am responsible, I have to pay for irresponsible people, and if I'm irresponsible, then responsible people have to pay for me. So that's a very perverse incentive, if disincentive to people to actually make good life choices.
Well, it's the paradox that will always kill collectivism. It inherently cannot survive because it goes against human nature.
Yep. That's what this show's about, my friend. So, hey, before I let you go, because I just want to make sure I'm not missing anyone else, is there any other final thoughts you want to give us?
Just don't decriminalize, legalize, or tax choke cherries in any fashion, and we'll be fine.
Keep choke cherries illegal 2019.
All right, Spike.
Thanks a lot, man.
Out, and I'm going to watch the rest of the show. Thanks.
Yeah, God save our queen. God bless Canada. Thank you.
Yeah, whatever.
Cool. So we learned two good things. One is that the call-in system works, and two is that Jason is a great call-in guest. Thank you again, Jason. Let's see what we have on the calls here. And Jason's absolutely right. I mean, this all breaks down to, and you can extrapolate this to other stuff too, whether it's immigration or prostitution or any of these. And I'm not equating immigration to prostitution, but I'm just saying when you have the government say, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but they're also saying we will force people to pay for your choices, good or bad. That's not, because people will go, well, if you let people, what the libertarians want is for everyone to be on welfare because they made bad choices. But that's not looking at the reality that it's being created by the government. The government is creating this reality that would not otherwise exist through collectivism, like Jason said, by saying, hey, look, do whatever you want. And if it screws up, if it's in it, because it's probably inadvisable to do magic mushrooms every single day, or at least, large doses of magic mushrooms every single day, and smoking weed all day, and seeing hookers all day, and whatever, doing all this stuff and not having a job, and having a big student loan and all these other things. Things get rough. Don't worry about it. We'll have someone else pay for all of your life choices. Well, why the hell, other than just a good personal ethic, would people not do those things. And even if the majority of people, which this is charitable, but even if the vast majority of people just have a personal ethic that's like, well, I'm just going to do the right thing regardless, which is provably false, but let's say it is. You don't need much more than a small to moderate minority of people. And when I say minority, I don't mean minorities. I mean numerical minority of people. You don't need more than 10, 15, 20% of people to be like, I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And it crushes, it puts a crushing burden on everyone else, which is why, and government uses this to get people to say, no, make that illegal, put people in jail for doing it because I don't want to pay for their choices. They're not saying necessarily, I think you shouldn't be allowed to do this. They're saying, when you do this, if it fails, I don't want to be forced to be responsible for you. And I think if government were honest, they'd be able to have a better discussion. We'd be able to have a freer and better society wherein people could, you're responsible for your choices. And that even includes immigration. You come here, things don't work out. Okay, well then go back home. Or you can stay here and try to make it work, but no one's going to be forced to make you comfortable while you're here. So anyway, let's go through these comments. Sarah asked about Trump on the ballot. I have no idea how that works. So Sarah was talking about, there was we talked yesterday on the Muddy Waters of Freedom about California, the legislature. I don't know if the governor signed it, but they've passed a law, which they passed before, but it's never been signed, that says that in order to be on the presidential ballot in California, you have to have released your last 5 years of tax returns. And which is obviously pushed at, it's targeted to Trump, who won't release his tax returns, or at least his most recent ones. And it wouldn't matter if the electoral college system remained for Republicans, because Republicans don't win California. Where it becomes an issue is with this national popular vote. If you now have a situation wherein it now matters who won the popular vote as opposed to the electoral college, California, I would imagine the Republican presidential candidate gets, if not, it's definitely one of the top vote-getting states for them, even though they lose it, just because of how big it is, how big the population is. So I would bet that they probably get more votes in California than in Texas, just because California's population is so much bigger. So that would be a huge loss for Republicans, or for anyone who didn't release their tax returns, in terms of winning the national vote. And I think New York and some other states have signed on too. So if that ever became a thing where you had to release your tax returns, then now it's now good, you're not going to win, basically. But can they write them in? Probably, yeah, but obviously it's going to be harder to get someone to write in a name than to just check a name. But I think at the presidential level, you could probably get away with a write-in campaign. But I don't know, they may not allow write. I don't know how that works, so I apologize. Shane Sweeney says West Side till I move at some point. That's me with the East Side, man. I'm here till I'm not here. Jason Willis said truffle. Get it right. Oh, truffles. Truffle, like the mushroom, is better than pie? Or you're talking about chocolate truffle? I like pie. I'm not a big, super sweet person. Jacob says Nodak is basically Canada. I don't know what to tell you. Jacob's in Minnesota, which is also basically Canada. Matt says Tory Hunter. Good point. Shane Sweeney says, I would say property taxes and government intervention in private life contribute more to homelessness than drugs themselves. Drugs are a symptom, not a cause, in my opinion. I think that there are definitely people, but then you could argue I was going to say, there are people that get a pain issue and they get put on opioids, which are cheap. And then at some point, their doctor is told by the government, stop giving this person opioids. And now they got to get it illegally, whether it's the same opioids or going straight to heroin or whatever. But that is kind of an intervention in government. It's not really their business if a person is taking those drugs, and it kind of pushes them into street drugs. I was an addict for many years, and many of my years. I'm not that old, but I saw the other side of that, where people who otherwise were, I think, okay, really hit it hard and got into harder stuff, which thankfully I dabbled in harder stuff, but I never really got heavy into harder stuff like all the time. I can see where people were drugs themselves, but it takes all kinds. And the bottom line is that if you didn't have this artificial safety net, not from a charity that's willing to help you, but you got to do better, but just, yeah, you exist and you have a social security number. So here's your free stuff, and we're going to rob you and everyone else to pay for it. Because that's what welfare is. They rob everyone, and especially disproportionately rob the poor and middle income people, and then give some of it back to them if they decide they really deserve it. And then the rest goes towards, the war on drugs, endless entitlements, interest on the growing debt, all sorts of earmark boondoggle crap. So I mean, it's not a good system. Chris Reynolds, attorney at law. Ladies and gentlemen, if you live in Florida and you need a good attorney, Chris Reynolds, attorney at law. Chris Reynolds says, this is why kratom is such a problem for government. Tough to tax, so we get a bunch of attempts to ban it. It also hurts the opiate pharma business. So non-opiates in general hurt the opiate pharmacy business. So weed, CBD oil, I don't know as much about kratom, but the kratom, kava, any of these things that are not addicting or not as addicting, and that can alleviate pain and other things that drive people to drugs. Because I mean, a lot of it's emotional stuff. A lot of addicts, they're just self-medicating. They don't like how the psychotropics make them feel, or they're just scared to try them. But drugs, they'll do, because drugs make them feel good. Like now. Psychotropics are more like you take them over the course of weeks and it slowly moderates your whatever. Whereas drugs, it's like, I feel good. I took this drug and 5 minutes later, 10 seconds later, an hour later, depending on the course of delivery and the type of drug, I feel great now. Of course, the problem is then you don't feel great when it's not in your system. You feel even worse. And that's when you end up in the whole chasing the dragon scenario. But that's, a lot of times it's an emotional issue too. But again, if personal responsibility is in place, people and their families are less likely to just throw their hands up and go, well, I'll just do whatever I want, because you are ultimately responsible for your choices. Timothy Ichiyasu says, Social Security, prime example. It's a prime example if you're saying of government getting involved in stuff, yeah, because that is a Ponzi scheme. So Ponzi schemes are illegal. If you try, so this is an interesting thing. If you tomorrow or today said, I've created a great new retirement plan for every American in this country, and you structured it exactly like Social Security, but not even making them give you money. It's voluntary whether they give you the money or not. So it's not even mandatory like Social Security is, but they give you your money, and you structure the entire system the exact way, word for word, that Social Security is set up. You give us money, you give us money, you give us money. It goes into a general fund, and we pay it out to people once they reach a certain age. If you set that up, you would pretty much immediately get in trouble for antitrust, Ponzi scheming, all of that stuff, because it's a Ponzi scheme. It is a pyramid scheme. It is a scheme that only works if the number of people giving in is better than the people giving that are taking out. And because as the population ages, as the life expectancy goes up, and as people still retire at roughly the same age that they used to, so people used to retire at death. People used to work until they died. So Social Security was a safety net. It was marketed as a safety net for those people who retired and hadn't died yet. So 65 was the cutoff age, and I think 66 or 67 was the average life expectancy at the time for women, and it was like 65 for men. And at the time, the vast majority of workers were men. So this was, hey guys, when you die, your wife will be good for those 2 years before she dies. That's pretty much what it was. And this was coming out of the Depression, which was created by the Federal Reserve, where people were scared to death of not having anything. Sounded good. Well, now people retire in their late 60s. Their retirement age has gone up a little. The average life expectancy right now is somewhere around 80, and the average baby boomer is expected to live to be around 90. That's the average. That means it will not be uncommon for people to live to be 100. Like, it will be just as common for people to live to be 100 as it will be for them to die at 80, roughly. Which means that for a third of their lives, they will be getting paid, what is it, $1,400 a month now, and then going up with cost of living adjustments. And those cost of living adjustments aren't going away because baby boomers are the biggest voting bloc with a bullet. And you see who they vote for. I mean, it's going to be between Biden, who will definitely give COLA increases each year, and Trump, who will definitely give COLA increases each year. So, and then with the declining birth rate, and with aversion to, massive immigration, which is needed to, fill the taxed workers, something's got to give, and that's how pyramid schemes work. Potato, says Brian Wolf, or potato. Yes, I agree with you. Shane Sweeney is trying to start a fight with Jason Lyon, and I reject it, and I won't even get involved in that. Jason and I have mutual friends, apparently. Jason's a great guy. He's my favorite. He and Jacob are my two favorite Canadian adjacent people. Mr. America, bearded and truthful news comrade. You and Shane, we don't have beef with Shane anymore. Well, I don't, until the next contrived fight that we have. We need some work for drugs set up by businesses. Listen, if that were legal, then there would be no unemployment rate. If they said, if Trump said, get to work on building the wall and I will give you drugs, record time would that thing get built. I can't testify to the quality of it, but it would get built. A thing would be erected near the border. Can't tell you how it would work. Pretty sure it wouldn't work well, but it would happen. And that's really what matters to people. I don't think people care if the wall is going to work. At this point, it's just like, he said he'd build it. He needs to build it. I don't think. Sarah says kratom is an opioid. Is it an opium derivative? Like I said, I don't know much about kratom. I know kava is. I don't know much about kava. I know it's muddy. And it apparently tastes like mud, and it makes you calm. And my neurologist did not recommend it because I have MS, and did not recommend me taking a muscle relaxant because my muscles are already pretty relaxed. I'm getting another call. That's 2 calls. 571 area code. Thank you for joining me at My Fellow Americans. Who's this?
So this is your co-host.
Hey! I feel bad that I don't know your number.
I was like, wow, he doesn't have my number saved.
I'm thanks to smart. I used to be great with numbers, but thanks to smartphones, I know the last 4 digits of my wife's number and like the last 4 digits of like 2 or 3 of my closest family members. Everything else, I just look up name. How are you doing?
Yeah, that's fair. I'm doing well. The salmon you recommended I make is almost done.
Oh, wow. I wish
no,
I knew how
really
to patch
excited
you in so we could watch you eat it. Is it, so guys, just to give you a little background story, I eat a lot of salmon, and I reject any anti-Semitic thoughts you're having right now. But
I accept all of them now.
Yeah, Matt accepts your anti-Semitism. I reject it. And I've said this. I said this to the Florida libertarians against Nazism or whatever. I said that our show, The Mighty Waters of Freedom, is essentially me just trying to convince you to stop being a Nazi, please. And it just hasn't worked. And every week it's,
not even a little.
It's like, Jason, Nazism's bad. Anyway, so, and you're like, no, it's freaking great. Hitler, real Nazism hasn't been tried. What's that? What was that?
No, I was saying Nazism worked so well in the past.
It works great. It hasn't really been tried. That was late stage
Right, we
capitalism.
need to try it.
Real Nazism.
We need to try real Nazism.
Yes, real Nazism has not.
Yeah.
That's a hashtag that I won't use ever. So
Ever.
So anyway, so Jason, because he knows I'm Jewish, he asked me about salmon, which I thought was very brave of him as a actual Nazi. And so I gave him my recommendation. He does not have salt, proving he's a white Gentile. That he doesn't have any apparently any salt. But it turned out well, right? Or you haven't had it yet?
I haven't had it yet. No, it is in the oven. It is almost done. I'm very excited about it because I did find cinnamon.
Oh, you did find cinnamon?
I did. I had that.
Ooh.
I don't know where I got it.
Did you have
but I had
Are you
it.
sure it's cinnamon?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I can read. I'm not Shane Sweeney.
Whoa. I'm increasing the piece with Shane, but that wow. Like Remzo Martinez, huh? So did you have rosemary?
No, basil.
Well, that's that's the rosemary of leafy green herbs.
Sure.
So all right, cool. So
the real reason I was actually calling was because of kratom.
Oh, good. Thank God. Yes. Please tell us about kratom because I don't.
Yeah. Yeah, you're like, is it an opiate? And okay, so no, it is not an opioid.
Okay.
It's not a derivative of an opiate.
Okay.
What kratom does is it attaches itself to the opioid receptors in the brain, which will give some people a sensation that is very similar to opiates.
Ah, okay.
But it is not. It doesn't bind in the same. It doesn't bind in the same way, so it doesn't have the same addictive principles that an opiate does.
So it has some of the good effects, or some of the pleasant effects without the bad, the addiction part.
Right. And they say that like something fell.
Did you drop the salmon?
I did not drop the salmon.
Okay,
I was
good.
getting ready to pull the salmon out, and something else fell.
Oh, okay.
But they say that less than 1% of people get opiate-like addictive. What's that called? Withdrawal. You would think I would know that.
Having experienced it, yeah, right.
Having experienced
that thing I got a few times.
That thing, that awful thing,
that horrible thing that I whose name I forget.
Right, less than 1% of all people who use kratom will experience any sort of severe withdrawal from it. Other people will get, and then the number is slightly higher of people who will experience like a runny nose or restless leg syndrome or something like that, but it is a much more manageable symptom that you are now dealing with.
Then heroin symptoms, yeah, those are usually a little worse than restless legs. Yeah, so that's just a smidge. And I mean the thing is, now correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Narcan? The drugs, methadone, those are all opiates, right?
Yeah, they are light. They are not as strong opiates. So like Suboxone is a mixture of two things. One is is a blocker in order to stop the receptors from receiving things, so that way you don't actually feel the withdrawal symptoms. And then the other is like a mild opiate. And then methadone is, I believe that is just like, if normal people were to take methadone, it would probably feel like taking Vicodin. A heroin addict taking it, it feels like survival.
Right. It takes the edge off. So my point is that you have people that got on opiates that then had to scale up their opiate use and are now having to scale down their opiate use using opiates. So it's almost like the opiate industry is doing pretty damn well from that. So when you have something like a kratom or weed or whatever else people can use to take the edge off that isn't an opiate, that's a problem and needs to be treated as one in the public policy sphere, because it's cutting into our business. We got a good thing going. We've got a sympathetic public who wants to stop with the people dying on the streets of heroin, and if they hear there's other ways to do it besides just a different type of an opiate or opiate mixture, then that's going to suck, because you can't charge nearly as much to the insurance company for something you can grow out of cow poop as you can for Suboxone or what was the one that just Sarah said naloxone. There are a few. I've heard of a few, but I mean they're all the same thing. They're all opiates that are so
right. Somebody broke. Kratom's been broken down into its chemical compound, and there is a company out there that made synthetic kratom. Mitragine. I haven't had to do the speech in a while. Mitragine speciosa or something like that. I can't remember the scientific term for it. There is a company out there that got the patent for synthetic kratom. One of the board members of that company was Scott Gottlieb, who then became head of the FDA.
I knew I recognized that name. Yeah.
Kratom.
Yeah.
Who then tried to ban kratom.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And saying it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that he has the patents on it.
Yeah, this would be like if the guy who made K2 or whatever it's called got on the FDA and is like, we need to keep weed illegal forever. Is that what it's called? The synthetic weed, K2, K spice?
Like the spice.
Yeah, spice and all that crap.
Yeah, it's like if Mr. Nice Guy here in Florida was like, okay, now I'm in charge of the FDA, make weed illegal forever, but this stuff...
Yeah, have the stuff that actually has killed people instead, instead of the actual stuff. So cool. So I am very excited to find out how the salmon tasted. So while you're doing whatever, Sarah asked, please excuse that I don't know the Jew connection to salmon, lox and cream cheese. Fill me in. Yes, basically. So smoked. So Jews. In my mind, and maybe this is just a city thing, but Jews in my mind have a very close connection to smoked meats, especially smoked fishes. So you hear of kippers, and you hear of all these different things. And I don't know, I haven't really seen a lot of...
Shit.
What's that?
That's really good.
What the salmon?
Yeah, no, that's really good.
Yes. And you didn't even have salt.
That may be how I make that from... No.
And you didn't even have salt, and it still came good. Imagine if it had just a little bit of soy sauce on it. But yeah, no. So well, good. I'm glad that came out well. So just to put this in perspective, earlier today I bought 10 pounds of hot smoked black pepper salmon sockeye, wild Alaskan sockeye, because it was on sale, which is kind of the intersection of all Jewish things, buying smoked fish on sale. Is gefilte fish smoked? No, and if it was, I still wouldn't eat it. It is a white fish that is put in a brine to scare children. I don't know why gefilte fish is a thing. I don't know. I'm sure it was like that was how it was preserved before refrigeration, but we're free now. Like, we aren't, we didn't just get out of Egypt. Like, we can eat refrigerate. I don't know why gefilte fish. I don't know why that's allowed. That's something that should be... I mean, you want to talk about making something illegal. That's terrible. Matt, before I let you go, so to see if anyone else calls in, got any final things you want to share before enjoying your delicious spikeified salmon?
Tune in tomorrow night for Hannah Cox on the Writer's Block.
Hannah Cox with the conservatives who are concerned with the death penalty, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Very good. Yeah, be sure to check out Matt on the Writer's Block tomorrow night at, we doing 8?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock with Hannah Cox, conservatives concerned about the death penalty. Thanks, Matt, for calling in.
Yeah, man. Talk to you later.
Enjoy your fish, you beautiful man. Okay, so, yes, gefilte fish is a terrible thing. It should be illegal, and anyone who imports it should be administered the death penalty without an appeal. My dad used to buy that on sale after holidays, and then we donate it to the canned food drives, which is kind of like mean. I mean, I've never been homeless or had like a food security issues, like, I don't know where my next meal's coming from. I've never really had that. But it just kind of seems cruel. Like, it's like, man, I could starve or I could eat this, what appears to be like some kind of rotting, like, so for those who don't know what a gefilte fish looks like, were you ever in science class and they'd have this like thing filled with formaldehyde and it would have some kind of like dead animal in it, and it was there for a long time, and so it was just kind of falling apart. So that's what gefilte fish looks like. And I think the brine is made of formaldehyde. That would make sense because you have to be intoxicated on something to eat it. So I would think that that's probably why it's not illegal. Probably the Jewish lobby, if I had to guess. So now the thing with salmon, especially smoked salmon, I've just found smoked fishes in general seem to have a very like Jewish connection. Lox, gravlox, novalox, all that stuff. I mean, come on. Yeah, lox. And then hot smoked salmon. I had some smoked salmon before I got out here. So I'm a big salmon eater. I'm essentially a pescatarian, and I eat a lot of fish, especially salmon, because I can get it to taste like chicken. I don't know if that's Jewish, but lutefisk, I don't know if that qualifies as smoked, or it's similar to gravlox in that I think it gets buried at some point. But if you take anything, any dead body, and cover it in lye and leave it there, that's a crime against God and nature. And I've never tried it. I've only tried to smell it. And that was enough for me to know that Scandinavians there's something wrong. Something's wrong there. That's why Russia wasn't able to successfully invade Finland, because they were scared of a people who would eat that. Lutefisk is preserved in lye, yeah. Because that's what you do with food. Is put it in lye. So, again, we have gefilte fish, which I am like, no, bad, stop. But smoked? Oh, smoked fishes. Smoked fish. I have, there's actually, for those who want to support Muddied Waters Media, there's a $600 Bluetooth powered smoker. Well, Bluetooth, you can, it's a smart smoker. Smoke up to, I think, 30 pounds of meat and fish at a time. $600 is a deal. It's on Amazon. That would really help the Muddied Waters family, especially me. If any of y'all want to buy that, my birthday is next month. So I'm just putting that out there. And you have to soak it multiple times to make it safe to eat. The lutefisk to wash the lye out because it's toxic and you die from eating it. But let's wash it like 6 times, and then it's fine to eat. What a great thing to eat. I'm going to serve this to my children. Yum. Eat up. It doesn't have much lye in it anymore, kids. And it tastes terrible. I don't know what it tastes like. I know what it smells like, and I know from doing wine tastings that your taste and smell are almost inextricably linked. So if it smells like that, your brain's not going to let it taste too good. That's what I know about that. So the other thing that we didn't really get to talk about much on the show last night, and I'm sure Jason will cover this way better than I could. Let me tell you something about Jason Lyon, the up-and-comer of Muddied Waters Media. He has a show on Monday and Fridays called Mr. America, The Bearded Truth. He is like, if you ever want to know my opinion on something, but you just don't want to deal with like my smug, dry sarcasm or my disarmingly good looks, almost pretty looks that I have, and you find me to be too much, then tune in to Jason Lyon, who's also an attractive man. I'm not sure I'd call him a pretty man, whereas I'm pretty, and it's unsettling to some people. And I get it. I look in the mirror and I'm like, this is a bit much. So I get that. So if this is too much, if this aesthetic and the overconfident smugness that comes with it, as would be expected with someone who looks like this, is too much for you, then tune in to Jason Lyon, Mr. America the Beard. Tune in anyway. But especially if you just can't take me, definitely tune in to Jason Lyon, Mr. America the Bearded Truth, because he pretty much gives my opinion, but just better. It's like my show except better, in terms of like his delivery and his lack of an eagerness to offend and alienate people, as I do. I forgot what I was going with that. Now it says we're online. I don't know what's going on. We may or may not be online or offline. I don't know whether we're online or offline. But if we're online, then welcome to the show. I was just trying to remember what I was talking about with Jason. Yes, are we connected again? Are we connected? Do we online? Are we online? I don't know if we're online. We may or may not be online. If I'm online, I think I'm online. It says I'm online. It says I'm online. I don't know if yeah, it says you're back. And it's gone. Now am I back? Oh, for God's sake. I don't know if I'm back or not. I don't know if I'm back or not. It says I might be back. I don't know if I'm back. It says I'm back. It says I'm back. No, I think it says I'm back. I'm back. Hey everybody, I'm back. I see you. Thank you so much. So, and I'm getting a call. Not only am I back, I'm getting a call from, I think, Matt again. Hi, is this Matt again? He hung up. This is good. Yep, I'm back. All right, so, Jason Lyon has a great show. And I don't know what I was saying about that. Oh, he's probably going to talk about this on Friday. I don't know if Matt will have a chance to bring it up because he's talking with his guest, Hannah Cox, specifically about the death penalty. But I'll bring it up. This Trump versus China tariff situation. So the stock market's not been doing well this week because it was looking like the Trump administration and I should know this, Chinese administration were working out a trade deal that was going to include a net reduction of tariffs on both sides and no new tariffs. Apparently, it appears that the Chinese government reneged on some of their promises of not introducing or continuing tariffs. And so the Trump administration has responded they're going to be starting Friday. They plan to increase tariffs on quite a few things from 10% to 25%. And China was already scheduled to come, I think, this week to the White House to discuss this. The hope, obviously, is that they work something out so that we won't end up in this escalation of a trade war. So the common narrative about tariffs, the statist narrative about tariffs, is that when other countries, their governments issue tariffs on our products, it hurts our workers. And the only thing that we can do in retaliation is to pass our own tariffs to hurt them as a negotiation tactic to either get Americans to just, and this is where the groups diverge. One group says, we want tariffs to remain sky high so that Americans will buy American because it'll be so expensive to buy not American. Or there's another group who says, no, we want no tariffs ideally, or very few tariffs, but if they're going to have tariffs, we need to have tariffs, and that will, once those tariffs, if they agree to get rid of their tariffs, then we'll get rid of ours as well. Here's the problem with that. Tariffs are a tax. Tariffs are a tax that are ultimately, and all taxes are paid by the consumer. So when the left, for example, will say, well, we're not raising taxes on people, we just want to raise them on these big corporations. Who buys stuff from the big corporations? All of us. That tax is added to it. So it's a tax that's, all taxes are paid by the consumer. So a tariff is paid for by the consumer. Well, who is the consumer in this situation? Us. If China is adding tariffs to American products, the Chinese consumer suffers as a result of that. They have to pay more for American products, or they have to end up then paying, more for a Chinese product because it's at least a little bit less than the American product once the tariff has been added. If the issue here is that American products are more expensive than products that have to be shipped here from thousands of miles away, that is a problem probably with American taxes, American regulations, and other things that make American products more expensive. The answer is to get rid of those things so American products are cheaper. Okay? The answer is not to introduce tariffs on things that are cheaper, introduce taxes on things that are cheaper so that you either now have to pay more for that thing that's from somewhere else or pay more than you were paying for the American thing. So, if without the tariffs, the foreign thing costs you this much and the American thing costs you this much, and the tariff makes the foreign thing cost this much, you're not saving money. You're losing. Either way, you're getting screwed because you're having to pay more than you were paying because taxes are theft and they make things cost more. I would hope with a primarily libertarian and conservative audience, I wouldn't have to say this. So these negotiations are sort of like two people sitting across from each other threatening to hit themselves if the other one doesn't stop hitting themselves. If you don't stop hitting yourself, I'm going to hit myself even harder until you stop. How about we just stop hitting ourselves? If China wants to make goods artificially expensive for their consumers, that hurts their consumers. It doesn't really help because here's the reality. If you make things too expensive, eventually the big suppliers go where stuff's cheaper. So for example, with steel. Imagine you own a air conditioning company. You have to use a lot of steel. Now, you've been buying steel from Canada, China, Mexico, wherever, because it's cheaper. So they introduce steel. The U.S. government introduces steel tariffs. So now, you either have to buy American steel, which is more expensive than the steel you were buying, which means you now have to increase the price of your product, making it less competitive with foreign products, because I thought the whole idea was we were being more competitive, but it makes you less competitive. Either way, whether you're buying American steel or foreign steel, you're now paying more than you used to pay. Well, you're a large company. You can just go where the steel's still cheaper. And so you make that initial investment to move your factory to China, to Canada, to Mexico. Or the government says, no, don't go anywhere. We'll put tariffs on those foreign air conditioners to make your air conditioners cheaper. Well, now that problem just moves on to some other supplier that needs air conditioners for their business. And the worse you make it, the more it eventually gets down to small businesses that can't move. And they can't compete with foreigners, so they just go out of business. So this doesn't help American businesses any more than any other tax does. And it definitely doesn't help American consumers any more than any other tax does. If foreign countries want to jump off a bridge, we don't have to join them. People say, oh, we got to deal with this trade imbalance. There's a trade imbalance. We're buying more stuff from China than China's buying from us. And it's a travesty and it's an imbalance. There is no such thing as a trade imbalance. Let me give you a scenario. You go to Walmart and you go up to the Walmart greeter and the Walmart greeter says, hey, welcome to Walmart. And you go, I don't want to hear any of that garbage from you. I got your number. I know what's going on here. I'm buying way more stuff from you than you're buying from me. We have a trade imbalance that's just through the roof. It's like $30,000 last year I bought stuff from you, Walmart, and you didn't buy a damn thing from me. Not even a single damn thing. Our trade imbalance is through the roof. If you don't stop this, I'm going to start taxing myself every time I buy anything from you. Because I'm negotiating from a position of strength. And Walmart goes, if you want to tax yourself, you can, but you don't have anything I want to buy. We're Walmart. What do you have to buy? What do you have to sell? Well, that doesn't matter. Now, you're probably thinking, well, that's not a trade imbalance because I gave them money and they gave me stuff. Yeah. We're not giving China money and they're giving us less money. We're buying stuff from Chinese companies. There was no imbalance there. We voluntarily chose to buy this thing, and then China agreed that we would give them that amount of money for that. That is an even trade. So trade imbalance is right up there with all the other statist buzzwords like, common sense gun control and I don't know, merit-based immigration. And I have so many of them usually that I use. Fairness in media. And what's some other ones? Combating inequality. These are all various buzzwords that are used by the government to convince you that someone is harming you other than the government, and that the answer is to have the government harm you more. Tariffs are a perfect example of that. There are people that are super happy that Trump is going to make their cost of living more expensive in some kind of negotiation to tell China to stop making stuff more expensive for their consumers. Why? If we want to compete, if we want our products to compete with Chinese products, remove the regulations, taxes, and various other fees and other things that licensing, various other things that government puts in place to raise the bar so that it makes it harder for new startups to come in. And it also, for both the new startups and the existing companies, it just makes it more expensive. Now, the big companies like that. I'm ranting now. The big companies love that. They love stuff being made harder and more expensive because they're already established. Their competitors are not already established. Walmart has no problem. Look at Facebook right now, basically all but, they're doing the Brer Rabbit with the briar patch. Oh, please don't regulate me. They want to be regulated. They want to be turned into a utility. They want to be etched in government stone forever and ever so that they never have to worry about serious competition replacing them. And that's what these other big companies do. Remember, it was all the big, we were told we need net neutrality because these big wig companies are going to run all over us and they're going to charge us if we want anything other than Netflix and Hulu and Facebook. We're going to have to pay millions of dollars. They're going to screw us because that'll definitely be a good business model for them. And yet, it was all the big media companies, internet service providers, cable utilities, all of them were saying, yeah, we need net neutrality to make sure we don't do that. They wanted net neutrality to prevent competition, to enshrine themselves as the existing competitors, and to basically allow them to create these quasi-cartels where they, where this is our territory and that's your territory, so that prices go through the roof and there's little competition and there's not any real increase in quality of the product. because that's what big businesses do. And we're so convinced that Donald Trump or Obama or Bush or whoever is fighting for the common man. With these tariffs, he's making sure that the American worker gets back on their feet. What he's really doing is making sure that a handful of entrenched special interests driven companies, rent seekers, companies that would not exist, or at least not exist as big as they are without government interference, can continue to do this with little to no competition at the expense of everyone else, especially you as the lower to middle income American consumer. So that's what's happening with the tariffs and the China thing. I don't know. Like Yao Ming. Jacob LaBelle says Yao Ming. Yao Ming has a height disparity with me. I think that I'm not sure how Yao Ming, but yes. Let me see. Oh, good. The chat thing is doubled. You're back. Speed talk. That's pretty much what I'm doing. Don't jinx it. Yeah. Oh my God, you aren't deplatformed. Thank God. Cross your fingers. Throw their tea into the harbor. Green tea. Yes. How many American products do the Chinese consume in raw numbers? I don't know. Trump just doesn't want to admit the Chinese have him by the balls. I don't really know. Like, I think that they're going to end up having, I think this is a lot of palace intrigue. First of all, Trump thrives on conflict, which is counterintuitive because most politicians are about, they want controlled conflict in specific situations where they control all the narratives and can present themselves as a fighter. But everywhere else, they want political expediency. And Trump seems to look for things where politicians would usually look for political expediency and instead just make a massive culture war out of it. He seems to thrive in that kind of conflict. He's very much, as Jeb Bush called him, Jeb, please clap. He called him the chaos candidate, and there's some truth to that. So I don't even know where to go with that. Brian Wolf says, China is buying more services from us, correct? And we buy more materials from them. How is that wrong? I don't know the breakdown, and this is where I get out of the collective stuff, because we say China and us. Consumers buy from providers and consumers buy from providers, and vice versa. I don't know what the breakdowns are. I just know that there is no real such thing as a trade deficit unless someone got robbed. That's a trade deficit. If I come up to you and say, give me your damn money. We have a trade deficit with the federal government and state governments and city governments. We have a trade deficit with government at large. They take our money and don't give us much. That's a trade deficit. That is a trade that is unequal. And the reason it's unequal, it's because it's coerced. You have to do it. If you don't do it, you're going to get in trouble. If you get in enough trouble, you go to jail. If you fight against that, they will kill you. There are IRS agents who are like trained for fighting, like they're like FBI or whatever. To you know, if they have to take you down, they will. So just pay it. That's a trade imbalance. China has never forced us to buy anything. The Chinese government, nor any Chinese providers, nor any Mexican or Canadian or whatever providers have ever forced us to buy a single thing from any of them. We willingly purchase these things. That's even trade. I give you this much money and you give me the thing that I wanted. So, let's see. Tariffs solve trade disputes the same way a wall fixes immigration issues. Yes, Shane, that's yes. The trade and the trade arguments, trade protectionism arguments, are the immigration debate applied to things instead of people. It's the same arguments, but one is things and one is people. It gets a little bit more nuanced because it's people. You're now talking about stuff like our culture and you know, crime and stuff like that. But it all boils down to the same thing. I am scared of competition, and so I want policies enacted to violate my natural rights and their natural rights, harming all of us, because that at least gives me the feeling of being protected. But that's the Patriot Act or whatever. I mean, that's every government thing boils down to that. Jeff Pikarczyk, I hope I said your name right. Pikarczyk gave me the claps. Thank you so much. Andrew Richard Ito says, finally someone understands this whole misconception. It's, and I get it. Guys, I get the whole, like, if I have to sell something for $500 and they're able to sell it for $300, that's just not right. And I'm an American, and we should be buying American, and something has to be done. And I get it. I get that inclination. When you break it down and examine how it's going to actually work, what you're really saying is, I want everything to be more expensive, which will ultimately harm me because I also buy stuff from them. And so if you really distill it down into what the argument is, it makes the whole thing sound like what it really is, which is economically ill-informed and frightened people being taken advantage of by people who do know how it's going to work out and are perfectly fine with the outcome because they've positioned and leveraged themselves to benefit from everyone else doing poorly. So, Puckarchick. I'm probably still doing it wrong. I'm sorry. I'm trying my best, Jeff. Shane, the problem with China and Russia is that they're capitalizing where the U.S. screws up. Venezuela, North Korea, the EU, Syria, Iran, etc. Trump and his predecessors have laid the groundwork. This is what, so exactly correct. And it's nothing special about the U.S. being stupid. This is what empire costs. Name an empire that doesn't end up just getting torn down by almost everyone else and everyone else applauding after it happens, even if it leads to negative consequences. Because this is what happens. Puckarchick. Emphasis on second. Puckarchick. I'm trying. This is what happens with empire. This is why, so when people say, well, if we're not out there doing this, U.S. military, people will tell me, I'm against this war on terrorism. It's not right what's going on. But I'll tell you what, it scares me, the vacuum of power. If we leave the Middle East, because we have a say, we're doing it. It's not being done in our names and our loved ones being sent there to do it. We're doing it, but that's the whole collective thing with that. But anyway, if we, all of us together in unison holding hands, if we leave the Middle East, well, then the Chinese and the Russians are going to come in. And now what? Now the Chinese and Russians are going to deal with massive, never-ending debt and having to either raise taxes or cut social services or both just to pay the debt, or just like we're doing, create endless reams of money that everyone knows is worthless and pretend that it's still worth something to spend on endless spending, and creating a massive debt bubble and speculation bubble in the process, and people increasingly hating them. Not just their government, but them. Because as a even quasi-democratic system, you're somewhat complicit. You voted for it. Not so much in China, but they vote for their cell leaders who then vote for whatever. So it's not democracy, but they have some ish say, but it's going to fall back on them. What are the benefits that they get? Prime access to oil. There's oil elsewhere. So this is an interesting thing I learned in the early 2000s when that whole oil bubble was happening. If someone can get all their oil here, that frees up oil here. Because there's not some massive expansion in the use of oil. Their use of oil is still roughly going up at the same rate that it was before. And ours has been pretty much level. Now, this is at a time we're worried about oil. The U.S. is a net exporter of oil. The hell do we need this oil so much for? Now, I get it. That sounds very nationalistic. Well, we have our own oil. We don't need these other people's oil. But that's not how the global market for something works. If people's needs are being met in a relatively easy way, it doesn't matter if we're buying oil from Iran or if the EU is buying oil from Iran, which frees up oil over here. Oil's oil for the most part. So it's not, it isn't, it's not, we don't need to kill all these people and make ourselves less safe and make ourselves less prosperous for oil. Like it's not, that is not a prime need when there's enough of it to go around. And especially at a time when technology is making us slowly, but with each year, just slightly less even dependent on fossil fuels. So if they take the oil, they take the oil. And they'll get every other terrible thing that comes with it. Like the world hating them. The world hated the USSR. They also hated America, but they hated the USSR. Sarah says, then what is our damn interest in Venezuela? Oil. But here's the problem. What is our interest? Sarah's and mine? None. It's ExxonMobil's interest. It's Chevron, Texaco, BP, whatever. It is vested, large corporate interest. And this is where the left gets it right, and then they just kind of fall off the map. There is little daylight between government and in a quasi-fascist, corporatist mixed economy. I'll call it mixed economy. People get mad when I say fascist because they think I'm comparing Trump to Hitler or whatever, and I'm not. I'm any more than I was comparing Obama to Hitler. The economic plank of American capitalism is corporatism, which is the economic plank of the fascist system. So I'm using fascist, just talking about the economic plank of it. But I'll say corporatist or mixed economy because that gets people less upset than saying fascist. Meanwhile, be mean to a cop and then get back to me on whether it's fascist or not. But anyway, so in a corporatist faux capitalist structure like ours, the one we live under, there's almost no daylight between government and big business. And I don't mean big business like, oh, hey, Jim's got a few stores, he's doing really well. I mean Walmart, Apple, Chevron. I keep saying Chevron. I don't even know if they're ExxonMobil, these huge oil companies, these huge agricultural companies, these huge insurance companies, all of these massive companies who have lobbyists who tell politicians, we will basically bankroll your campaign and keep you in office forever if you use the levers of power to keep us in control in our various sectors. So what's our interest? Amazon's definitely one too. The thing with Amazon is they're providing such a value to the consumer that it's hard to see what they're doing, but they are absolutely entrenching themselves as a permanent player. They get incredibly favorable rates with the post office that none of us could get. Now, they're also bulk users, but it's not even a rate that's available to anyone else. What's our interest? Yours and mine, Sarah? Yours and mine, Jacob? Anyone watching this? None? Our interest is in, we don't want to be robbed to pay to invade another country and destabilize it even worse than it is now. People say things couldn't possibly get worse in Venezuela. Look at Syria. It can get worse in Venezuela. One of my Facebook friends, Connor J. Nepo said, he said the situation in Venezuela can be summed up in 6 words. And I believe the 6 words were, oh God. It was something like socialism sucks, intervention will make it worse, or something like that. And that's exactly the case. Venezuela is in the situation they are because socialism sucks, and they've attempted to implement real socialism, it has done what it always does. Price controls and all that crap has led to everything that any basic Austrian economist would say would happen. So it's happened. The American government getting involved is how it goes from Venezuela to Syria or Somalia or something like that. So no, I definitely would not support us getting involved with that. Sarah Branyan, on side note, did you see the whole thing about Baltimore getting hacked? They are asking for ransom paid in cryptocurrency. Baltimore can't pay for that crap. They can't even fix heat in their schools. It's a trade deficit. They are being robbed. I did not hear of this. I know that the mayor either has resigned or is in the process of resigning after they raided her house because she was faking her book sales or something like that. She was pretending she was sick for 2 months. Baltimore. So my parents fled Baltimore in 1988. And I have a lot of loved ones that still live in Baltimore, but I am glad we left because it does not sound like things are going well there. I'm not going to lie. It sounds like things are going like when I would say, like, to my dad, when I was a little kid, and I'd say, well, why did we move from Baltimore? And they go, well, because Myrtle Beach is beautiful and the weather's nice all year long and traffic's better. And then, like, when I got older, my dad's like, Baltimore was being ruined. They were destroying everything. And so I took it somewhat with a grain of salt. But it turns out I think he was right on that one. So I don't know, but how do you hack a city? Sarah says, it makes me sad to see them eat zoo animals, so that is my interest. But the point was, yes, oil. Like, that is the problem with pulling out of the Middle East. China and Russia take the oil, and damn it, the petrodollar shifts. But look at what comes with the petrodollar. We're not benefiting from that. There are very large vested multinational corporations that benefit from it. We are getting harmed from it. The petrodollar is built on massive speculation and global military dominance. How is that helping us? With massive inflation ratios, our money being a joke. The debt that is going to be paid at this point by our great-grandchildren just continuing to skyrocket with no end in sight. And us being told that if we want a $10 increase in our Social Security, or we want to be taxed less, or we want Social Security to be reformed, that we're the greedy ones. Not them, who created this whole mess of a system, but us. So, no, that doesn't help us. It doesn't help us. Yes, I have an interest in that. Seeing what the Venezuelan people are going through is absolutely devastating, which is why when I hear New Zealand or any of these countries that gun control, the logical conclusion of gun control is the Venezuelan police can run you over casually just for protesting because there's not a damn thing you can do to stop them effectively, other than like making bombs and stuff like that. But for the average Venezuelan citizen, they have no way to effectively fight back. And that's what, we talk about, self-defense from criminals and hunting and things like that. Those are all important things. That is not the primary role for the right to keep and bear arms. And whether you like the Constitution or not, I'm not a huge fan. I'm a much bigger fan of the Articles of Confederation or just nothing. But the right to keep and bear arms is the ability to decentralize the ability to effectively use violence. And if that ability is centrally put into, centrally, if the ability to effectively project violence is centralized into a government, I don't care how, happy-go-lucky and kind and sweet that government is, at some point it can turn, probably will turn, at the worst time when people are doing poorly, and you're going to get what comes from that. So that is that. This is, to the people that are applauding, like, oh, thank God we can't own weapons that fire that can hold more than 10 rounds. Gonna need more than that to take down a mine-resistant armored personnel carrier. So probably gonna start wrapping things up. Is anyone else getting a ton of stream dropouts? I don't know what to tell you guys. I'm not getting any notifications about it, but it might be happening. I'm sorry if it is. This is the fun of using a bunch of free services, is that sometimes it doesn't work that well. So we will have to. It looks like it's still live to me, so hopefully not. Shane Sweeney says, for the U.S. to lose all credibility and trading power post hegemony, or hegemony, however you say that. But again, it's the U.S. government. Like, if you think of a U.S. that isn't, there's so many things. If the U.S. pulled out of NATO, European countries who right now are thumbing their noses that, we have socialized healthcare. Now they have to pay for their own defense. They're not going to have socialized healthcare anymore. Or their taxes are going to be so high that they effectively don't own anything. We are subsidizing, and this includes Israel, we are subsidizing liberal social democracies, progressive social democracies, to have endless cradle-to-grave welfare systems by subsidizing the defense that we all think that they need. Why? Let them do it. Let them pay for it. Let them, if they want socialized everything, good, pay for it. And you'll need to pay for your own military because we're not going to sit there and now you're going to have to acknowledge that some of these other world powers are actual threats and all the stuff that's going to come from that. So no, I totally welcome a world in which Russia and China are the main antagonists to the world. And the US is just sitting back trading with people and making money on top of money. I win. Let's start that now. Was it Ron Paul said, war with no one, trade in peace with everyone, or however. I know I just butchered that. But that's me all day long. I have no interest in, the lives and well-being and financial future of myself and every single person I care about being leveraged for powerful multinational companies who have, rent-seeking lobbyists in government. I have no interest in that. So on that cheery note, I think I'm going to wrap things up because you guys don't seem to have any more questions. I think I've covered way more than I thought I was. I've been up here almost... let's see, one more thing. FYI, Baltimore had some municipal systems hacked with ransomware. I'm reading that people were having issues paying property debts because they couldn't access any files regarding people's specific debts. Several department email systems aren't working. That sounds great. That isn't fun. Like I said, I have a lot of loved ones living in Baltimore, so I don't want to crow too loudly about that. But I mean, Baltimore has been on a slow. There's another place you can't have a gun. Baltimore's been on you can't have a gun, and yet some of the highest gun violence rates on earth. Not to mention the police that like to plant stuff on people. Any type of gun control is unconstitutional. The reason for the Second Amendment is to protect ourselves from our own government, meaning the citizens at large should be able to have the same weapons as the government's military. Listen, Andrew, for those who don't know, I'm an anarcho-capitalist or pan-anarchist, right anarchist, whatever you want to call me. I'm not a huge fan of the Constitution because I think if you get away from the Bill of Rights and you look at like the first 7 articles, it is largely an explanation of how government can rob us, kidnap us, and kill us as they see fit. Just the taxation clause and the habeas corpus clause are enough to tell me that the anti-federalists were correct and that we should have stuck, if we had to stick with anything, to the Articles of Confederation, which actually did limit government by not allowing them to tax us. Anyway, that said, the spirit behind the Second Amendment, or the ostensive, what we are told is the ostensible purpose behind the Second Amendment. Yes, it is not about. It is not about self-protection from criminals, although that's an important thing. It's not about target shooting. It's not about hunting. It is about keeping the reality of power in check. That the more power is centralized, the more the ability to project violence is centralized, the worse that's going to be. Okay? You and a neighbor having a beef, and you have an Apache helicopter, and they've got a taser. At the end of the day, you know that you can run over that person. And so that person is at the mercy of your goodwill if you have any. If you guys are roughly equally armed, that's not even going to come up. Because neither of you want to go there. You both value your lives as normal human beings and want to just go about your life. So, yes, that's, people we can argue about unconstitutional, constitutional. I don't really get into that stuff because that's a legalism argument, but any type of gun control is a violation of your natural right to protect yourself from any and all threats, including centralized ones who give themselves badges and write on sheets of paper that they're allowed to do it. Still wrong. So guys, I think I've covered everything. I think I'm gonna get out of here when my back is still feeling somewhat normal. So thanks again for tuning in to my fellow Americans. If you're a first-time listener, if you're listening, I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, I am remiss to talk about something that matters a lot to me. Anchor FM. You know, Anchor FM, we recently got involved with Anchor FM. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast, guys. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your phone or computer. So if you want a podcast, Anchor is what you want to use. They even have creation tools, you see, that allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great. They'll distribute your podcast for you for free so it can be heard everywhere, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. Now you're probably thinking, Spike, this is insane. This can't possibly be true. And in fact, it is impossible that you could possibly say anything different, anything more about Anchor FM that would make it sound even better. Well, you're wrong, because Anchor FM, if you were wanting to make money from podcasting, which good luck, but if you were wanting to make money from podcasting, you can easily make money from your podcast with Anchor FM with no minimum listenership, which is, I'd never heard of such a thing. But you can make money with just a handful of listeners. Not a lot of money, but there's no minimum listenership. So guys, be sure to download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started with your podcasting today. If you do so, if you decide to do it and start a podcast, let us know. Give us the address so we can give you good reviews on there. Be sure to give us good reviews on our Anchor FM, Anchor FM / Muddied Waters, I think it is. But we're on all the different everything. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, SoundCloud. We're on our website, muddiedwatersoffreedom.com. We are everywhere. So thank you again for tuning in to my fellow Americans. I hope we all learned something special today. I know I did. And be sure to tune in tomorrow as part of the weekly Muddied Waters media family. Be sure to turn in tomorrow to right here, Muddied Waters, for my co-host, Matt Wright's show, The Writer's Block. He will have Hannah Cox of the Conservatives Concerned About the Death Penalty. So that should be a fun show. They're going to get into death penalty topic. And then on Friday, Shabbat Shalom, it's Jason Lyon with Mr. America, The Bearded Truth on Friday nights. Have a great weekend. This is the Mother's Day weekend. Do something nice. If you are blessed to have a mother who is still alive, do something nice for her. Do something sweet for her. And if you're a mother, happy Mother's Day. You're one of the good ones. And then come back here Monday for the week beginning episode of Mr. America, The Bearded Truth, as he parses through the current events from a uniquely bearded perspective. And then tune in the following day, Tuesday, for the Muddy Waters of Freedom, where me and Matt Wright talk about all the hot topics, as only two older millennial former drug addicts can, in our own special way. And then tune in again next week for my fellow Americans. I'm not 100% sure who my guest will be, but I think I'm going to have a guest. Probably going to have a guest. And I'll let you know who it is. But be sure to tune in. So guys, thanks again for joining. And thank you for putting up with me being this rusty. I had a great time. I hope you did. Thanks again, and God bless you.
come together, become hybrid, at the least slightly like-minded. Indeed, the life I've lived brings light to kindness. All you need is a sign, put a cease to the crimes, put an ease to the minds like mine. Sometimes darkness is all I find. You know what they say about an eye for an eye, in a time when the blind lead the blind. Who am I to deny? I would cry when a loved one dies. I recognize that body outside, bullet holes in the body that was alive, now confined to a chalk outline. Find out how, but you never know why. It ain't even make it to the news at 9. It ain't even make it to the news at 9. That's my sister, mother, father, brother, son. That's one of mine. All these years I close my eyes, open up to only find I'm in line.